welcome to the Retail Refresh, the show where we talk about everything to do with retail media and technology. I'm Jas, and today I'm joined by an incredible new co-host, Aliya. Aliya, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jas. Excited to be here. But I don't have to tell any dad jokes, do I?
No, at least not today.
Okay, good.
Well, you're the perfect co-host for today's episode because we're going to be touching on a topic that you're going to love, which is using omni-channel retail strategies like mobile and out of home to drive folks into stores.
Cool. You mean those physical locations that people go and buy stuff? Is that what you mean by stores?
Yeah. You got it.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, let's get into it. Our guest today is David Gore, Senior Media Advisor at Bluebite. He's a decade-long veteran of the media world and an expert in out-of-home advertising and the use of mobile data and other tools to enhance and analyze campaigns. We'll be talking about retail and media, but mostly about finding opportunities with out-of-home and mobile advertising to get folks into stores and take action once they're there. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
To start us off, can you maybe tell us a little bit about Bluebite?
Yeah, so we've been around the block for about, I'd say, 17 plus years. Our efforts are really mainly to combine both the physical and digital advertising landscapes and essentially work together. So what we try to do is our goal is basically enhance an out-of-home campaign with context-based personalized mobile ads that we deliver through our proven, easy-to-use solutions like geofencing and our intellectual exclusive property called shadow fencing. So by creating these sort of virtual perimeters based off of latitude and longitudes of whether they're traditional assets, physical locations, or with shadow fencing, moving vehicles, we're able to send that complementary ad message in real time to a mobile device.
Awesome. So on this show, we talk a lot about the in-store environment. But for now, let's focus on getting folks into that environment. Mobile and out-of-home channels that are obviously channels that you're very big on. How specifically can they be used to drive visitation to retailers? And we'd love an example if you have one.
Yeah, I think the best way to drive visitation, especially for retailers, and from our standpoint, is our VWI footfall attribution. This is basically a people-based study to measure the impact of a digital advertising campaign on driving visitation to that physical store location during hours of operation. So basically, we're leveraging that device location and media that's being served to determine which people were exposed to the brand's ad and visited that specific store location. What brands are able to kind of gain from this kind of powerful study is insights into where that target audience goes before and after that kind of initial exposure to that brand's ad, which also leverages essentially the offline location data to get even more insights about that raw in-store visitation. So by doing all this, we really explored that exposed audience and especially trends around all major retailers in that space. Kind of a great example is we did a campaign where PayPal implemented a VWI footfall study during the height of the pandemic. It was definitely an interesting time because during that, everything was during that uncertainty. All stores were pretty much, or any kind of retail locations were essentially shut down, unless they were an essential business. But what they actually ended up doing was they partnered up with CVS to drive awareness during these unprecedented times where they could use their PayPal app for contactless payment at a CVS store location. And by adding on this kind of footfall study, they're able to see trends across all their market coverage and how their consumers were being led to that specific store location because of mobile.
That's super cool. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten people into the stores. How about the in-store experience? Do you have any advice on how best to create a sort of continuous experience with out-of-home and mobile messaging that also complements digital displays when folks are in stores?
Yeah, I think that kind of the best way to get to kind of create that continuous experience, and I think it's great where you have both of those mediums, where you have the out of home and the mobile part of it being um, combined into one for that kind of continuous experience. But I think to really drive that, even continue to have that experience even go further, is being able to device retarget those exposed individuals at a later point in time. So when we add on device retargeting to campaigns, this gives the brand that ability to send that follow-up message to increase their frequency and relevancy throughout the course of their campaign. So when we initially geofence, we do everything in real time. But let's just say that, for an example, that that individual who was entered into that virtual perimeter, but they didn't necessarily click on that ad, or they didn't pick up their phone at that time. Because they've been exposed and because they've entered into that virtual perimeter, this gives us the ability to continue to enforce that kind of messaging and reach throughout their daily or weekly journey, especially even after departing that specific store location. And kind of going a step further, not only can we follow up with them at a later point in time on mobile and tablets, but also this is where we kind of continue to extend our capabilities, where we're able to do cross-device retargeting to reach other devices like besides tablets, but like laptops, desktops, CTV, OTT, with some sort of line of in-stream video ad that we actually just added on this year.
Yeah, awesome. So it's really leveraging that omni-channel approach to how can we recapture those individuals regardless of where they've gone to get back into the in-store experience. Um, Beyond driving visits, though, I think retailers are intent on using their channels to drive action. So, adding things to carts, whether that's online or in store, scanning their loyalty cards, making an eventual purchase, obviously. So, if we talk about this combination of out of home and mobile, I'm curious about what opportunities there are to use those kinds of behaviors to actually drive the actions that retailers want.
And I think this is the kind of the beauty of Bluebite too, and especially when adding on a mobile component to it, is that this gives us that ability to bridge that geographical gap between that physical messaging and their mobile display ads and reaching that right consumer. So by adding on behavioral targeting segments, we can target a brand's consumers based on certain habits and interests. So let's just say we have a brand that has products in a variety of supermarkets, like a Whole Foods. We get out on an audience segment such as individuals that have entered into a Whole Foods in the last 30 days, or even target purchase intent, whether it is intent to purchase their own product or a specific brand's competitor. This kind of gives that ability to utilize both their out of home placements and mobile to determine whether an individual, based on that initial exposure that led them to a desired landing page, to enact that secondary action, which then leads us into more of the digital attribution, which I think is the cornerstone of how we combine that out of home and mobile messaging, and that's essentially what we do here and why we kind of excel into that attribution, because it gives us that ability to provide those powerful tools and metrics that originate from that consumers or potential customer of a brand, where they're in that direct proximity of that out of home unit. So by doing this, we're going to be able to utilize something like web conversions, where we place a pixel on the website to track secondary actions like signups, purchases, loyalty, card redemptions, and more. There's actually a campaign that was very successful at that we ran a while back. So this was a festival called the Voodoo Festival down in New Orleans, where they measured return on investments of individuals who purchased a ticket for that specific day of that festival. Because we implemented that pixel and enabled those web conversions, the client was able to essentially see that ticket confirmation. So they were able to track those consumers who bought a ticket and purchased that ticket on that particular day. And because of this, they saw 104% on return of investment, as they made back their campaign investment just from exposed user ticket sales on their website.
So I know you mentioned a few different ways that, we can leverage mobile. And of course, like in a lot of ways, mobile means data. Um, Are there any other ways that retailers can learn more about the effectiveness of their campaigns or anything about their audience or any other valuable data that might come out of leveraging mobile?
Yeah, I think that's, there's a lot of tons of potential opportunity when it comes to that kind of data component of, and essentially that's what we do here, which actually kind of really does excite me about this potential data component and the potential for retailers to learn more about their effectiveness of their campaigns and maybe their messaging, and how we're able to do this. And we've added this on, I'd probably say like maybe 2 years ago now, is getting that brand lift and consumer sentiment survey study. So this study is able to understand market information by essentially conducting a one question survey with a particular audience to see how they're responding and who those audiences are. So we're able to measure that impact of upper funnel campaigns on consumers' perception of the brand, or a mid to lower funnel for consideration of purchase intent. So this survey can do is measure and drive brand awareness, which supports all devices and channels for that cross environment attribution as well. But I think about also another potential here is also understand how mobile is essentially leveraging your out of home buys by understanding not only that sort of where your consumers are going, but essentially that is sentiment in the marketplace. So with that kind of being said, on a simple level, we can also tag that landing page with Google Analytic parameters to track audience profiles of people who visit the website from a mobile campaign. These metrics on audience demographics will pull essentially directly into the client's Google Analytics, where they can see how their campaign is performing based on those audience demographics that they choose in real time.
That's super cool. Obviously, there's a lot of potential here for a retailer or a brand. So, if we had any advice for retailers or brands that want to start using mobile data to drive that real world behavior, where would you advise them to start? Are there any common stumbling blocks? And how could our audience best avoid some of those?
Yeah, I think the kind of a great place to start for any brand, and in this particular case, for any retailer that is kind of getting into mobile and combining that with out of home, is really kind of the first step is to kind of identify what your core audience makeup is. I think from there we can narrow in on that precise type of consumer we're reaching based on that behavioral audience targeting. So, for example, we could also pick up, target specific points of interest that match that brand's demographic as well. Kind of a great example on this one too is, so Duggan geofences all their locations for people who are frequent coffee drinkers. So they're able to kind of understand that individuals who've entered into their store location are most likely going to be coffee drinkers. And I think another best way to start is also defining the use of what they want to utilize mobile um, for. I mean, who they want to kind of specifically target and where you want to target them. I think this can also be kind of beneficial for a location perspective, whether it's out of home or mobile, because we're identifying those location targets and following that specific audience on their daily journey to essentially create that secondary action. In terms of stumbling blocks, I think the one thing that I see the most is a call to action, or they're hardly a call to action on mobile assets. I think if the creatives have some sort of call to action, it just makes our job and my job a lot easier to give that person an opportunity for a brand to create that secondary action. So if there's a call to action, it gives more incentive for that consumer to click on that ad and get them to that desired landing page.
I love how everything you're talking about, it's sort of the data and the analytics side of things are all integrated. So from like a marketer standpoint, that just sounds like such a dream. um, so I know you've given us some really excellent examples of different ways that that retailers and other brands have used in-store media, and also leveraging mobile. But is there maybe another idea you have, or something you've seen where a retailer is using digital media as well as the mobile component, or even if there's something that you offer that you don't see leveraged enough that you'd like to see more of?
Ooh, there's one cool idea that I have kind of in my back pocket a little bit. I'm kind of dying to do this one is
Intrigued.
yeah, I'm actually very happy about this question because I've been kind of dying to really kind of talk about it and get this kind of implemented into a campaign. And that's our household identification cross-device retargeting with sort of I mentioned the in-stream video creative that we added on. So essentially, this gives us the ability to bring out of home in home. So
Hmm.
initially, we're able to serve that individual who's exposed to that out of home, whether it's in store. But then also, if we're just kind of like device retargeting, not only do we get that kind of initial exposure outside and where the out of home placements are, but we're not only kind of that slogan of bringing out of home in home, but we can not only target that person's device, but also reach that entire household across all different types of devices. So this gives us the ability to broaden that scope of who we want to target just by the user's whereabouts, depending on whether they're at home, away from home, or whatever it is that they're doing. I think this is actually something that could be very valuable for brands who not only want to reach a single qualifying member of that household, but that extension of their family as well, which when we enable that cross device capability to that same member of that household, we're just increasing that frequency, we're increasing that relevancy, and we're getting across all of these different types of channels, whether it's tablets, mobile devices, laptops, connected TVs, OTT, and actually really kind of does give that omni-channel perspective of
Hmm.
where everyone is kind of essentially where your creatives are being sent to and how people are actually receiving those messaging on whatever device that they're on. So I think that's the one thing that I've tried to implement on a couple campaigns. Um,
Hmm.
but I think there's definitely a lot more that's there, especially for any type of retailer that utilizes out of home and wants to add on mobile.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, so, David, is there anything else you think our audience should know? I know you've shared some really great information with us. And where can they reach out to you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I think there's one thing that we also added on this year in terms of an attribution study, and it's kind of funny that we're talking about in-store media and retail and getting that individual to actually not only improve that awareness, but also essentially to increase purchases. So we've
Hmm.
added a new attribution study this year called the Commerce Signals Attribution, which is essentially perfect for retailers. So this is an attribution study that it measures either in-store purchases or online purchases from MasterCard and Via Card payment data sets. And not only are we able to kind of measure how the attribution of mobile is leading into those purchases, but we can kind of get a little bit specific on it depending on who the brand is on that particular brand level as well. So I'm really kind of excited to share that with the out of home community, especially in that kind of retail space as well.
Hmm.
And this kind of gives us that ability we always continue to evolve our capabilities every single year. The best way to reach out to me or to anyone on our connected media team, just shoot us an email at media.team@bluebite.com for more info. And also, there's going to be two articles below for
Hmm.
context on how we're able to amplify a brand's out of home messaging in real time.
Awesome, and we'll make sure that we include that information in the description as well. David, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, David.